The silence of space was absolute. The Cathari 12, a ruin excavator ship, hovered over the frozen planet of VIII, its hull battered by cutting winds. On the main deck, Malk Vor, mission commander, analyzed the data with wide eyes. A human. Cryostasis pod at the monitor blinked with an impossible reading. Status. Active. Malk ran his fingers over the scales on his reptilian face. Humans didn't exist. They were war myths, legends told in space taverns about a race that had gone extinct millennia ago. Most civilizations didn't even believe they had ever been real. But there one was, sealed inside a sarcophagus of metal forged with technology the modern galaxy couldn't replicate. He pressed a button on his communicator. Open it. Captain, what if it's dangerous? Malk turned his yellow eyes toward his subordinate. If it's dangerous, it means we can sell it for an even higher price. The miners activated the reawakening sequence. A deep crack echoed through the hangar, followed by the hiss of pressurized gas escaping from the metallic joints. The pod trembled. The visor flickered, and then the eyes inside it opened. Pain. It was the first thing Marcus Kane felt as he emerged from the pod. His nerves burned. The cold cut his skin like razors. His lungs contracted and a guttural groan escaped his throat. As he tried to understand where he was, shadows moved around him, tall, non-human figures. Their voices were harsh, strange. His body reacted before his mind fully awakened. His soldier instincts took over. Before one of the aliens could take a step, Marcus moved. His hand gripped the throat of the nearest creature. Bones shattered like glass beneath his fingers. Panic. The others drew weapons, fired. Plasma bolts tore through the air, but Marcus was too fast. He spun, dodging, his left hand yanking a weapon from one of the miner's holsters. He fired. A kinetic round struck an alien in the chest, slamming it against the wall. Another tried to flee. Marcus caught him before he reached the exit, twisting his neck with a sharp snap. Silence. The only survivor was Malk Vor, now kneeling, panting. Marcus stared at him, his steel-hard eyes rising and falling with his heavy breaths. Where am I? The alien swallowed hard. VIII, a forgotten planet. What happened to Earth, to the Empire? Silence was his answer. Then, Malk murmured, humanity is dead. You vanished 10,000 years ago. Marcus felt the world spin around him. His mind wrestled with the information. It couldn't be true. The Terran Empire ruled over 800 worlds. His people mastered war, trade, science. How could they have been wiped out? You're lying, he growled. Malk laughed, a bitter sound. You think you're the first to wake up? We've found others before you. All old ghosts of your dead race. Some woke up and went mad. Others simply accepted it. Rage boiled inside Marcus. His fists clenched. No. The Empire couldn't have been erased from history. He wouldn't accept it. Never. Marcus activated the ship's panels. He needed to know. He needed proof. The systems responded to his touch, the alien technology interacting with his cybernetic implants as if recognizing his authority. The screens lit up with star maps. He analyzed the data. Earth was catalogued as a forbidden zone, a black hole of information surrounded by autonomous satellites that destroyed any ship attempting to enter the solar system. He frowned. This wasn't total annihilation. This was something else. He looked at Malk, who shrank away. Who did this? The alien didn't answer. Marcus gritted his teeth. There was something they weren't telling him. Someone erased humanity from history, but hid it in the process, and he would find out who. He grabbed the heaviest weapon from the ship's arsenal and turned toward the launch hatch. What are you going to do? Malk asked, still on the floor, trembling. Marcus stopped and looked over his shoulder. I'm going to show this galaxy that humanity never dies. The hatch opened. The cutting wind struck his face as he leapt from the ship, falling into the ruins below like a soldier returning to the battlefield. His enemies thought they were safe, They had forgotten what humanity truly was. And now, he was awake. And the war had begun again. The cold cut like blades as Marcus Kane descended the metallic wreckage of the Cathari-12. The wind howled through the ruins of VIII, a planet that once, perhaps, had been more than just rock and ice. But now, it was nothing more than another forgotten graveyard. Behind him, the mining ship continued to burn, its hull cracking in the freezing air. Marcus adjusted the heavy rifle on his shoulder and looked at the sky. He needed to get out of there. The galaxy believed his species was dead, but he had found information that said otherwise. Earth was marked as a forbidden zone on star maps, surrounded by defense technology that annihilated any ship attempting to enter. This wasn't extermination. This was a cover-up. And if someone had gone so far as to erase humanity from history, it meant there was something worth hiding. Marcus clenched his teeth. The anger still burned in his chest. He needed a ship, and he needed answers. Then he heard the hiss of a short-range transmitter. He searched through the belt of Malk Vor, the alien commander who now lay dead with a broken neck. He grabbed the device and activated the signal. The voice on the other end was rough, mechanized, speaking in an alien language, but his neural implants translated it automatically. "Malk, you haven't responded to the last check-in. Is everything secure? Was the package acquired?" Marcus smiled. 15 minutes later, Marcus hid atop an icy cliff, watching the approach of the Akatash, a mid-sized armored freighter. He knew these weren't simple merchants. Judging by the angular shape of the hull and the defense turrets along its exterior, they were bounty hunters or mercenaries. The right kind of people to steal from. The freighter landed near the wreckage of the Cathari-12. The landing ramp lowered and 4 figures stepped out to inspect the debris. They wore composite armor, their helmets reflecting the hangar lights. All of them were armed. One of them, a massive blue-skinned brute with cybernetic implants, carried a rifle that looked capable of blowing up a small ship with a single shot. Marcus moved. With the precision that only a decade of war could teach, he slid across the ice, silently descending toward the ship's ramp. If the mercenaries noticed anything strange, it would already be too late. He slipped into the Akatash, his eyes scanning the narrow corridors. He needed to reach the command deck, but before he could move forward, he heard the distinct click of a weapon being cocked. "Toot!" Found a rat. Marcus spun, dodging the shot in an instant, closing the distance with the enemy. His left hand's blade pierced through the mercenary's armor before he could scream, but the noise was enough. The ship's alarm blared, and the other mercenaries came running. "Intruder on board!" someone shouted. Marcus didn't hesitate. He grabbed the dead mercenary's weapon and fired at the first one who entered the corridor. The projectile punched through his helmet, splattering blood and metal across the walls. The blue-skinned brute raised his plasma rifle, but Marcus lunged at him, slamming him to the ground with brutal force. The two rolled across the metal floor, exchanging blows like predators locked in a survival duel. The mercenary roared, trying to crush Marcus's head with his cybernetic fist. Marcus caught his arm, forcing it into an unnatural angle until he heard the snap of metal breaking. The alien screamed, but Marcus silenced him with a shot to the throat. The last mercenary hesitated. Marcus locked eyes with him, his rifle raised. "The ship is mine now. Take one of the escape pods." The mercenary stepped back, dropped his weapon, and ran for his life. The Akatash now belonged to Marcus Kane. He adjusted the ship's controls, feeling the system respond smoothly. The Akatash was equipped with hyperspeed, reinforced shields, and a basic stealth system, perfect for someone who needed to travel undetected. He accessed the ship's database and began searching for information about Earth, about the Lost Empire. But what he found was even stranger. There was a transmission, a weak signal coming from the edge of the galaxy. He increased the frequency and tried to decode the message. The words were distorted, mixed with static. But then, he heard them clearly. "If anyone can hear this, you are not alone. Humanity was not erased. We survived." The voice faded and then vanished completely. Marcus's chest tightened. It was a human transmission, proof that someone was still out there. If it was a trap, he would find out. If it was real, then the war wasn't lost yet. He looked at the vastness of space before him. Now, he had a destination. He would find the last survivors of humanity, and he would make this galaxy remember what humanity truly was. Marcus Kane engaged the ship's engines and set course for the signal's coordinates. The legend was just beginning. The warp horizon stretched before the Akatash, a tunnel of stars twisting around the ship as Marcus Kane surged forward at hyperluminal speed. He was heading toward a dead sector of the galaxy, the Caldran borders, a place where no one traveled without a reason. But Marcus had a reason. The signal he had picked up on VIII still echoed in his thoughts. If anyone can hear this, you are not alone. Humanity was not erased. We survived. The transmission came from an abandoned star system, with no records of civilization for centuries. The fact that a human signal was coming from there only made everything more suspicious. Was it real? A trap? He would find out. Marcus adjusted the Akatash's shields. His new ship's navigation system was synced with his neural implants, allowing him to control the freighter as easily as he wielded a rifle. An alarm blinked on the console. Destination approaching. The space ahead of him tore open, and the ship dropped out of hyperspace into absolute emptiness. No planets, no visible space stations. Only the dead star Caldran, orbited by debris and deactivated satellites. And then he saw it. A human ship. Or at least, what was left of one. The massive wreck floated in the darkness, colossal and shattered. Marcus recognized the design immediately. That wasn't just any human ship. It was an Imperial dreadnought, one of the flying fortresses from ancient primordial Earth. Goliath class, the kind of ship that conquered entire planets. Marcus swallowed hard. What the hell was it doing here? He piloted the Akatash closer to the wreckage. The dreadnought's artillery turrets were inactive, burned out by time. No life signs on the sensors. Just a transmission code, pulsing over and over like a ghostly heartbeat in the void. Someone sent this signal, or something. Marcus grabbed his rifle, set the ship to standby mode, and jumped into the vacuum. His suit's propulsion system, though, old, still functioned, allowing him to glide across space toward the dreadnought's hull. The metal was blackened, scarred by explosions and the impact of time. He landed near a breach in the hull and stepped inside. Total darkness. The only light came from the lamp attached to his helmet. The interior was silent, littered with wreckage and loose cables. Signs of battle were everywhere. Bullet holes, evidence of internal explosions, but no bodies. The humans who had been here were gone. Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Something was wrong. He moved down the narrow corridor toward the ship's central core, where the data logs could still be accessed. The terminal lights flickered weakly as he powered it on. Lines of code appeared. He checked the date of the last entry. 146 years ago, around the time the war ended, and then he found the crew's final report. The holographic recording flickered to life. A man's face appeared, a human soldier, wearing an Imperial uniform, his face bloodied from open wounds. His eyes were filled with fear. Then came his voice, fast, breathless. If anyone finds this, Earth did not fall. We were betrayed. Marcus froze. The man continued. This message must reach anyone left. We were not destroyed. We were hunted. Whoever is hearing this, listen. Humanity is still alive. The recording glitched, gunfire echoing in the background. The soldier turned his head as if looking at something behind the camera. His eyes widened. Then, the screen flickered and went dark. Marcus frowned. This ship wasn't destroyed during the war. It was attacked afterward. But by who? Before he could process it, a new alarm triggered in his suit's sensors. He spun around and saw something move in the shadows. The figure emerged from the darkness, tall, sinuous, not human, but not alien either. It wore an armored suit, but its structure was all wrong. Its movements were artificial, its joints bending in ways that shouldn't be possible. And then Marcus saw it. The helmet bore an engraved emblem, an imperial earth symbol. His eyes narrowed. "What the hell are you?" The figure didn't answer. It just charged forward. Fast, deadly. Marcus raised his rifle and fired. The round struck the creature's chest, but it didn't fall. It ignored the shot. The thing lunged at him, and Marcus barely had time to roll aside before razor-sharp metal claws slashed through the floor where he had been. Now, he saw it clearly. It wasn't just a machine. It was a modified human soldier. Someone who had been turned into something beyond flesh and bone, someone who had been hunted and reprogrammed. Marcus barely had time to react before the next hit slammed him into a metal pillar. Pain exploded through his body, but he wouldn't stop. The enemy wasn't expecting resistance, and that was exactly what Marcus would give. With a primal roar, he threw himself back into the fight, whoever that soldier had once been. He had answers. The strike came fast. Marcus dodged by a hair, feeling the cybernetic soldier's claws scrape against his helmet. Sparks cut through the darkness like metallic thunder. He spun, kicking the creature hard in the chest, but the monster didn't budge. Marcus had no time to think. The transformed soldier attacked again, and this time, it hit. The impact was brutal. Marcus was sent flying backward, crashing into a steel column, cracking the metal on impact. His vision blurred. His ears rang. But he was no ordinary man. He was no machine. He was a warrior of Earth, and he wasn't going to fall here. Marcus pulled a kinetic grenade from his belt and hurled it at the enemy. Boom! The explosion of pure force blasted the monster back, making the dreadnought's hull tremble. But as the dust settled, Marcus saw the silhouette rising again. Shit! Without hesitation, he drew his hidden blade and charged like an animal. The enemy tried to strike first, but Marcus dodged, slid beneath it, and drove the blade into the creature's neck. It screamed, a metallic, distorted, agonized sound. Marcus twisted the blade's handle and yanked it upward, tearing half the monster's head off. The cybernetic body trembled, tried to react, but then it collapsed with a heavy thud. Marcus stood there, panting. If that was just one, then how many more were there? He needed to get out. Now. That's when the dreadnought's alarms blared. And then he heard the voice. Subject 01 identified. Phoenix protocol activated. Marcus's stomach dropped. Oh, great. The entire dreadnought came to life. Red lights pulsed along the walls. Ancient engines rumbled deep within the ship. The silence was replaced by the echo of metallic footsteps. Hundreds of footsteps. Marcus grabbed his rifle and ran. The once empty corridors filled with movement. Doors slid open. And they emerged. Dozens, hundreds. The exterminators, modified human warriors, soldiers of Earth, but twisted, transformed into something beyond flesh, beyond humanity. Their eyes glowed red, devoid of emotion. Their voices were metallic shadows, muttering words that made no sense, echoes of a broken mind. The Empire has fallen. Flesh is weak. Subject 01 will be assimilated. Like hell, Marcus raised his rifle, and then all hell broke loose. Bang, bang, bang! Gunfire roared like thunder. Marcus blasted one skull apart, but 3 more took its place. He spun, dodged a spinning blade, pulled out a plasma pistol, and burned another's head off. But they didn't stop. Their movements were perfect, calculated, like an unstoppable, deadly wave. And then, the dreadnought's walls opened, and the fleet appeared. For the first time, Marcus saw the truth. They had never been alone here. Out in space, an entire war fleet was closing in. Black, no insignia, no identity. It was them, the hunters, the ones who erased humanity from history. They had been waiting for him. And now, They were going to erase him too. But Marcus wasn't ready to die. He turned and sprinted back toward the Akatash. As he ran, the exterminators pursued. One leaped at him. He tore the creature's arm off. Another fired a plasma shot. He used a corpse as a shield. Marcus vaulted over a gap in the floor, sliding into the Akatash as the first blasts from the fleet struck the dreadnought. He bolted for the cockpit. Warning lights flashed red. But he didn't hesitate. With a roar, he engaged the engines, tearing the ship free from the dreadnought's hull. The hunters opened fire. Plasma beams exploded around the Akatash as Marcus pushed the ship into the debris field, dodging with superhuman reflexes. A torpedo grazed past, cracking the shields. Another locked onto him, but Marcus twisted the ship, and the torpedo slammed into a nearby cruiser. Boom! An explosion consumed part of the enemy fleet. Marcus grinned. If it was a hunt they wanted, then so be it. He wasn't going to run. He was going to survive. And then, he was going to hunt them back. The Akatash shot forward, slicing through the darkness of space, escaping the battle's edge. But Marcus knew. This war was just beginning, and this time, he wouldn't fight alone.
The torpedo was coming straight for him. Marcus gripped the Akatash's controls tightly, watching the deadly glow of the projectile grow on the screen. There was no room for evasive maneuvers. And then, the miracle happened. A pulse of blue energy tore through the void, destroying the torpedo before impact. Marcus blinked. What the fuck? The sensors picked up a new warp signature. And then it appeared. A colossal ship, worn by time, emerged from hyperspace like a titan waking from a nightmare. Its hull was patched, covered in battle scars. But among the makeshift repairs, Marcus saw something impossible. Human symbols. Before he could react, a voice filled with arrogance and defiance blasted through the Akatash's speakers. Akatash, this is Dark Dawn. If you're human, you've just been saved. If you're not, well, it's going to be a long night for you. Marcus grinned, and then, all hell broke loose. The Dark Dawn opened fire. Plasma cannons swept through space, blasting 2 enemy fighters before the others could react. Marcus wasted no time. He spun the Akatash, accelerating straight into the battlefield. If it was a fight they wanted, he was going to give them a war. 2 Hunters fighters turned to intercept him. The Akatash's sensors screamed with warnings. Marcus cut the engines for a second. The space around him went still. The enemy ships shot past him, unable to react in time. And then, he reignited the engines. The ship twisted sharply, placing the 2 enemies right in his sights. Bang, bang, 2 direct shots to each of their reactors. Twin explosions. Marcus grinned, but the battle wasn't over yet. The Dark Dawn was maneuvering, its shields absorbing impact after impact. A Hunter's cruiser moved into position above it, preparing a blast that would cut the ship in half. Marcus saw it, and he knew what he had to do. He pushed the throttle to maximum and sent the Akatash straight toward the cruiser. The system blared. Imminent collision! He ignored it. In the final seconds, he activated the lateral thrusters, swerving at the last moment, skimming past the cruiser's hull. But before passing, he fired 3 torpedoes directly into its reactor exhaust port. And then the explosion consumed everything. The cruiser imploded in a ball of fire. The Hunters began to retreat. They hadn't expected resistance, and now they were dying. Marcus watched the enemy ships flee into hyperspace. Silence returned. He took a deep breath. They had won. And then, the transmission came through again. Are you alive? Marcus picked up the communicator. I'm alive. Pause. Then, the voice on the other end laughed. Then I guess it's time we meet, soldier. We have a lot to talk about. The Akatash landed inside the Dark Dawn's hangar. As Marcus stepped off the ship, the air inside the vessel felt heavy with something strange. Something he hadn't felt in 10,000 years. Humanity. He looked around. They were here. Men and women. Real humans. Some were young, others older. All bore the hardened eyes of time, the scars of ancient battles, and patched uniforms from past generations. They stared at him as if they had seen a ghost. A figure stepped forward, a woman, tall, dark-skinned, shaved on the sides with a scar running from her left eye to her jawline. Her gaze showed no fear, only determination. "Marcus Kane?" He narrowed his eyes. "And you are?" She smirked. "Commander Alessa Vorin, last leader of the human resistance." Marcus felt something stir inside him. The resistance existed, but for how long? Alessa stepped closer. "I assume you want answers." "More than anything." She nodded. "Then here's the truth." She looked around, signaling for everyone to listen. "We weren't defeated, we were betrayed." Marcus's blood ran cold. "What?" She continued. "Humanity wasn't wiped out. We were erased. The hunters aren't just some random force. They are the keepers of our oblivion. They didn't kill us. They buried us alive." Marcus clenched his fists. "Why?" Alessa's smirk faded. "Because Earth still exists." Silence. Marcus froze. Alessa took a deep breath. The human empire fell, but it wasn't destroyed. Earth is isolated behind a barrier no one can breach. Something, or someone, wants to keep humanity imprisoned, and anyone who escapes is hunted down and erased. Marcus felt the weight of the revelation. Earth was alive, but it was a prison. Then, Alessa crossed her arms. "Now tell me, soldier, are you ready to take these sons of bitches down?" Marcus grinned, because now he had an army, and vengeance was just beginning. Silence. Marcus Kane stared at Alessa Vorin, the leader of the resistance, feeling the weight of her words resonate in his chest like distant thunder. Earth still exists. This wasn't just a revelation. It was a call to war. Humanity hadn't been wiped out. It had been locked away, buried, and whoever did it knew exactly what they were doing. Marcus clenched his fists. If Earth is alive, then why hasn't anyone rescued it? Alessa sighed, crossing her arms. Because no one can reach it, Kane, and no one gets out. She tapped a holographic panel on the wall, and instantly a map of the galaxy projected into the air. At the center, the ancient solar system, but it was isolated. A massive black zone surrounded it, like an invisible wall blocking any attempt at approach. "This is the Dark Wall," Alessa continued, "an impenetrable barrier that blocks any ship, signal, or communication. We've tried everything. Nothing gets through." Marcus studied the projection, his mind burning with questions. Alessa went on. "It was built after the war. We don't know who did it or how, but anything that tries to cross simply disappears." Marcus's stomach sank. "And no one knows what's inside?" She shook her head. "For 10,000 years, Earth has been a tomb, a buried secret." Marcus remained silent. His blood pounded. This revelation was too big to ignore, and there was only one possible response. He looked at Alessa. "Then we're going in." The entire hangar fell silent. The resistance survivors glanced at each other. Some looked confused, others shocked. Some smiled, as if they had been waiting for someone to finally say it. Alessa raised an eyebrow. "And how the hell do you plan on doing that?" Marcus smirked. "The human way, with brute force, sheer insanity, and one hell of a suicide plan." The silence lasted only a second before erupting into shouts of approval. The war for Earth was about to begin. 1 week later, the interior of the Dark Dawn was ablaze with activity. Marcus marched across the main deck, watching the last warriors of humanity prepare for battle. They weren't an army. They were living legends. Warriors, mercenaries, rebels, the forgotten children of a dead empire. And now, they were ready to set the galaxy on fire. In the armory, enhanced soldiers loaded weapons that couldn't be built today. Ancient human rifles designed to destroy entire fleets. In the hangars, pilots reactivated Imperial-era fighters, Old and ugly ships, but faster and deadlier than any modern technology. The aliens thought humans had been wiped out. But Marcus looked at these warriors and saw a species that refused to die. And when humanity decided to fight, nothing could stop them. Alessa found Marcus in the middle of the hangar. She tossed him a small holographic device. "Here's our suicide plan." He activated the hologram. The galactic map shimmered in the air. The target, one of the hunters' strongholds. "That's an enemy fortress," Marcus said. Alessa nodded. "And inside it is our ticket to Earth. They have something that can open the dark wall." Marcus rotated the holographic device. "So, we break in, steal this thing, and kill everyone?" Alessa smirked. "Exactly." Marcus looked around. Soldiers fine-tuning their weapons. Pilots sharpening their blades. Engineers awakening long-forgotten war machines. And he felt it. This wasn't just a mission. It was the beginning of an uprising. He looked at Alessa. "When do we leave?" She grinned. "Right now." The Resistance fleet jumped into hyperspace, and hell came with them. The Hunter's fortress was a floating metal city in the void, protected by automated defense towers and patrolled by elite fighter squadrons. The sensors detected the humans' arrival instantly. "Alert! Alert!" But it was too late. The human ships opened fire. The last warriors of Earth descended upon their enemies like vengeful gods. Marcus led the charge. He dived straight into the fortresses, shields, his ship cutting through a storm of plasma fire. Explosions surrounded him. Warning lights flashed, but he kept going. And then, boom! He punched a hole through the shields. The human ships began landing. Close quarters combat erupted through the fortress's metallic corridors. Marcus drew his blade and charged. The hunters tried to fight back, but they weren't ready for the storm that fell upon them. The first had his skull crushed. The second was torn in half. The third begged for mercy. Marcus gave none. Humans were monsters. Humans were unstoppable. And when they decided to fight, the galaxy burned. After hours of battle, the fortress corridors were stained with blood. Marcus and Alessa reached the central core of the installation. And in the heart of the room, protected by force fields and guards armed to the teeth, was the device. The key, the only way to tear down the dark wall and reach Earth. Marcus grinned. Let the last human's war cry be heard. The central core of the Hunter's fortress was consumed by chaos. The metallic floor trembled with distant explosions as the last resistance soldiers pushed through the corridors, clearing out the remaining enemies. But Marcus Kane wasn't there for blood. He was there for the key. At the center of the room, suspended by force fields, was a translucent black cube, pulsing in crimson tones. It was strange, almost organic, as if space itself distorted around it. Alessa Voren analyzed the data on her wrist display, frowning. "This is technology we were never meant to have." Marcus narrowed his eyes. Translation: "We have no damn clue what this is, but it works?" Alessa nodded slowly. "It's a rift core, something that can manipulate space-time folding. With this we can break through the dark wall." Marcus grinned. "Then let's steal this thing." But before they could disable the force field, the ceiling exploded. Debris rained down on them. The air filled with smoke and scorched metal. And then, they heard it. Heavy footsteps. Something massive was coming. A silhouette emerged from the dust. Gigantic. Relentless. The Hunter's last weapon. The Executioner. A hybrid of flesh and machine. Its armor black as the void itself. Its body was reinforced metal interwoven with modified human tissue. Its veins pulsed with nanomachines. And then it spoke. Its voice was synthetic, monstrous, layered with metallic echoes. "Humanity is extinct. You are nothing but echoes of a dead empire." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Funny. A possessed toaster telling us we're extinct." The Executioner moved with impossible speed, appearing before Marcus in an instant. The strike came down like a comet. Boom. Marcus was sent flying backward, crashing into a wall, denting the metal on impact. Air was forced from his lungs. Pain exploded through his ribs. But he laughed. He spat blood and stood up. "You're gonna have to do better than that, asshole," he charged, and hell began. The executioner launched a downward strike. Marcus dodged by an inch, twisting to the side and firing 3 plasma shots directly into the monster's chest. The shots melted on impact. Marcus cursed. "Seriously? You steal our tech and make it better?" The monster moved again. Marcus blocked with his forearms, but the impact tore through his armor and snapped a bone. Shit, this bastard was strong. But Marcus had fought gods before. He twisted his body, ducking low, and kicked the executioner's legs. The monster staggered for a second, and a second was all Marcus needed. He activated his carbon vibratory blade and plunged it into the creature's side. The executioner roared, the first sound of pain. The monster tried to grab him, but Marcus leaped back and emptied an entire magazine of armor-piercing rounds into its face. The bullets exploded against the mask, cracking the metal, revealing something beneath. And that's when Marcus saw it, and rage consumed him. What lay beneath the mask wasn't an alien. It was a human face, modified, deformed, scarred and filled with metallic implants. But human. Marcus's blood boiled. Sons of bitches. The monster was one of them. A warrior of Earth, turned into a weapon against his own people. The executioner lunged again, but this time Marcus felt no fear, only fury. "I didn't come here to die." Marcus ran straight at the enemy. The final strike came, and Marcus didn't dodge. He caught the executioner's arm mid-air, using all his strength. And then, he broke it. The snap of metal and bone echoed through the room. The executioner screamed, trying to break free. Marcus pulled a grenade from his belt and activated it. "Send a message to whoever made you. Tell them humanity is coming back." He shoved the grenade into the monster's mouth and kicked it backward. Boom! The body erupted into pieces. Marcus stood there, panting, covered in blood and black oil. He looked at Alessa. "Shut down the force field, we're taking the key." Alessa smirked, and then they stole humanity's future back. Explosions tore through the sky as the last human ships fled the fortress. The resistance had won, but Marcus knew. This wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. At the heart of the dark dawn, Marcus and Alessa studied the rift core, and then they made a discovery. The key didn't just bypass the dark wall, it could shut it down completely. Marcus turned to Alessa. "If we do this, Earth will be exposed," she nodded. "But for the first time in 10,000 years, humans will look up and see that we're still here." Marcus grinned. The war for Earth was about to begin, and the gods better be ready, because the humans were coming home. The human resistance fleet was assembled. Inside the dark dawn, the rift core, the key to breaching the dark wall, pulsed in crimson hues at the center of the command room. This was everything. Marcus Kane stared at the holographic projection of the solar system. For 10,000 years it had remained untouched, surrounded by an impenetrable barrier. But that would change today. Behind him, Alessa Vorin crossed her arms, her eyes scanning the final tactical reports. "We have fewer than 20 operational ships, Kane. If this goes wrong, it's the end of the resistance," Marcus smirked. "Then we better make it work." He turned to the other human commanders in the room, veterans of the Forgotten War, soldiers who survived in exile, assassins who refused to die. These were humanity's last warriors, and now they were about to do the impossible. "The Dark Wall is humanity's last prison," Marcus said, his voice echoing across the deck. "No one has ever passed through, but we will. We'll burn through whatever stands in our way and see what awaits us on the other side." Silence held for a second. Then one of the soldiers laughed. Another shouted, "Well, let's go to war, motherfuckers." The roar of the troops made the metal vibrate. Marcus grinned. He turned to Alessa. "Activate the rift core. Time to break this damn barrier." The human fleet jumped into hyperspace, and then they saw it. The dark wall. It was colossal, stretching endlessly across space like a living veil of darkness covering the entire solar system. A sentient abyss, impossible to cross. Marcus remained silent. No one spoke. No one had ever come this close before. Then Alessa activated the Rift Core's controls. The device began to glow, its energy rising until it became a storm of blue fire, engulfing the dark dawn. The dark wall reacted. It moved. It twisted. It opened. For an instant, a black hole appeared at the heart of the void, and they saw it. The solar system. Earth. Untouched. Perfect, and completely closed in on itself. Marcus felt his chest tighten. What he was seeing. It was a living planet. Earth wasn't just isolated. It was being cultivated, like a nursery, like a ticking time bomb. Alessa swallowed hard. This isn't right. And then, the alarm blared. They weren't alone. The ships appeared out of nowhere. They weren't hunters. They weren't alien. They were human, but nothing like anything Marcus had ever seen. Their hulls were golden, adorned with glowing geometric patterns. They looked more like temples than warships. Then, a transmission came through the open channel. A deep, impossibly calm voice spoke. "You should not be here." Marcus's blood ran cold. The holographic screen displayed the face of the being speaking. He was human, but not like them. His skin was pale, almost translucent. His eyes shone like blue stars. He looked like a god. And then, Marcus knew. These weren't normal humans. These were the ones who never left. The humans who stayed on Earth while the rest of the species was erased. The true heirs of the planet. And now they weren't happy. Marcus gritted his teeth. "Who the hell are you?" The being on the screen smiled slowly. "We are the lost civilization, the first empire, and you are a mistake that must be corrected." And then, the golden ship's shields activated. They were preparing to kill. Alessa glanced at Marcus. "I think we just found the real villains of history." Marcus grinned. "Then let's teach them what it means to be human." He pressed the fire button. The space around Earth erupted with colossal explosions. The golden ships of the lost civilization moved like divine shadows, their weapons firing pure energy beams that cut through the void like celestial blades. The resistance fleet struck back with fury. Ancient plasma cannons, gravitational torpedoes, swarms of combat drones. Humanity had brought its entire arsenal to war. But the humans of Earth were no easy prey. Their ships moved like ghosts, dodging destruction with impossible precision. And then the first resistance cruisers began to fall. The enemy defenses were absurd, technology beyond anything Marcus had ever seen. He gripped the Akatash's controls, veering away from an enemy blast that vaporized an allied fighter beside him. "This is a massacre," a resistance pilot screamed over comms. Marcus gritted his teeth. "Then let's even the odds." He unlocked the Singularity missiles and fired straight at the heart of the Golden Fleet. The projectiles tore through space. And then, boom! The explosion consumed 3 enemy ships at once. Their golden hulls shattered into flaming debris. The shockwave rippled through the resistance fleet. And then, the humans struck back with everything they had. The greatest battle in history had begun. And there was no turning back. Inside the dark dawn, Alessa Voron coordinated the battle, her voice as sharp as a blade. "Hold formation. Target their weak points. We're not fighting gods. We're fighting bastards who forgot what it means to be human." The resistance soldiers roared in response. Aboard the enemy ships, the lost humans watched the battle with cold detachment. Their leader, a towering figure named Emperor Silas, analyzed the war data with no emotion. "They are not worthy to return." His deep blue eyes glowed. He raised his hand and activated the final protocol. Earth responded. The dark wall closed again. Now no one could enter or leave. Humanity was trapped with its own monsters. And then, the second phase of the war began. They would take this fight to the ground. The resistance fleet breached Earth's atmosphere. For the first time in 10,000 years, exiled humans set foot on their homeworld. But the planet they found was not the one they remembered. The ancient cities were preserved, yet empty. Tokyo, Berlin, New York. So intact they seemed to be, waiting. And then, the defenses awakened. Entire armies rose from underground, machines, modified humans, and at the center of it all, the throne of Earth, a colossal golden citadel where the gods of the lost civilization had ruled in silence for millennia. Marcus stepped off the Akatash, feeling Earth's soil beneath his feet for the first time in 10,000 years. He felt it, the weight of history, the weight of humanity's legacy. He turned to Alessa. She nodded. Let's take it back. And then, the final attack began. The ground war was pure anarchy. Resistance forces clashed against enhanced soldiers, cyborgs, and weapons that defied physics. But humans were monsters. They fought like demons, like beasts who refused to die. Marcus led the charge like a bloodthirsty predator. He ripped an enemy's head off with his bare hands, shot, stabbed, broke bones. Every shot, every strike, was 10,000 years of vengeance. The lost humans tried to flee, but there was no escape. The resistance stormed the throne of Earth. And there he was, Emperor Silas, waiting for them, and he wasn't alone. Behind him, an army of divine avatars, the last army of humanity. Marcus grinned. I was hoping for something like this, and then he attacked. Marcus and Silas clashed like titans. Every strike shook the throne's structure. Silas moved like a god, his fists striking like thunder. But Marcus wasn't just any human. He was a soldier of Earth, and Earth doesn't create weaklings. He endured. He fought like a monster born from war. Every punch shattered Silas's armor. Every kick broke the enemy's defenses. The Emperor fell to his knees, gasping. His golden blood dripped onto the floor. Marcus aimed his gun at his head. Silas chuckled. You don't understand. We locked humanity away because we knew that if you ever returned, the universe would burn again. Marcus smirked. Then maybe it's time to remind this galaxy who's in charge. Boom! The shot pierced the Emperor's skull. He fell dead. The war was over. Humanity had won. Humanity rose from the ashes. Now we will master the fire. Earth was free. Emperor Silas was dead. The lost civilization was crushed by the return of the human resistance. And now, Marcus Kane stood atop the ruins of the Earth throne, gazing at a world that had been out of reach of the exiled for 10,000 years. The battle was over. But the entire universe had felt the impact. Inside the destroyed Great Hall, Alessa Voren wiped the blood from her face, looking at Marcus with a serious expression. We just sent a message to the entire galaxy. Marcus smiled. And I hope they understood. Because we're not stopping now. The sky over Earth still glowed with debris burning in the atmosphere. Human ships patrolled the space above the planet, now with a new purpose. Not as fugitives, not as rebels, but as conquerors. Marcus looked to the horizon. The new humanity had been born. But there was still one last enemy to crush, the hunters. And this time, there would be no more hiding for them. The war wasn't over. It was just beginning. The resistance fleet gathered above Earth. Aboard the Dark Dawn, the last human commanders were assembled, planning the final attack. On the holographic table, the star map glowed with the final target. The Hunter's Fortress. The last bastion of those who destroyed the human empire, who erased its history, who turned its soldiers into soulless war machines. Marcus rested his hands on the table, studying the map. Playtime's over. He rotated the hologram, zooming in on the fortress. No more running, no more lies, no more hunters. We'll crush these bastards and show this galaxy that we're the ones running the show now, the human soldiers shouted, in approval. Alessa nodded, crossing her arms. Are you sure this is what we want? Wouldn't it be better to rebuild first? Marcus looked at her. His eyes were as cold as space. We won't rebuild anything until we're sure there's no one left to tear it all down again. Alessa smiled. Then let's go to war. And so the resistance fleet set off for the final showdown. The Hunter's Fortress lay in the Black Heart, a sector of the galaxy where space was unstable and stars died without warning. The perfect place for rats to hide, but there were no more hiding places. The Resistance fleet emerged from hyperspace, 30 ships ready for battle, and the hunters were already waiting. Dozens of war cruisers appeared from the void, hundreds of fighters, and at the center of it all, the last mothership, Colossus of metal and shadows, the living fortress of the hunters. Their voice echoed through the human communicators. Humanity cannot be allowed to live. Marcus grinned. Then come try to kill us, you sons of bitches. And then space erupted in fire. The space battle was a spectacle of destruction. The human ships sliced through the skies like reborn predators. The hunters attacked with fury, trying to crush Earth's last warriors. But they weren't prepared for the sheer terror of facing humanity when it fights to survive. Marcus jumped from his ship straight onto an enemy cruiser, landing like a meteor on the metal hull. Before the hunters could react, he was already inside, alone. But he didn't need anyone else. He was the army. With a rifle in one hand and a blade in the other, he stormed through the corridors like a hurricane of death. The hunters fell one by one. Black blood and mechanical oil covered the ship's floor. And then Marcus reached the core, the pulsing heart of the ship, the intelligence that orchestrated humanity's destruction for millennia. And he didn't hesitate. He drove his blade into the center of the machine, tearing the wires, making the systems scream. The hunters' ships began to lose power. They were dying. And then, victory was certain. Marcus leaped from the cruiser back onto the Akatash, which came to retrieve him at the last second before the explosion. The last mothership of the hunters, shattered in space in a ball of flames and debris. They were finished. The war was finally over. And humanity had won. Days later, Earth was different. The last soldiers returned to the planet, now as conquerors of their own destiny. Atop the ruins of the Earth throne, Marcus Kane looked at his world. Alessa approached. "We did it." Marcus didn't respond immediately. He still smelled the blood, spilled. Still heard the echoes of war. "And now?" Alessa smiled. "Now we rebuild." Marcus looked to the horizon. They had won. But he knew. This war never truly ends, and when the universe realizes humanity is back, they will try to destroy us again, and Marcus would be ready. He always had been. Humanity was not just a survivor. Humanity was immortal, and now they had their home back. And anyone who tried to take it away again would discover the true terror of the race that never dies.